Hi, everyone. My name is Chris Everett, and I am the artistic director for the Southern Documentary Fund. And welcome to Negotiating Contracts for Independent Documentary Producers with J.R. Hardman, board member of the Documentary Producers Alliance. The Southern Documentary Fund is a nonprofit that cultivates documentary media made in or about the American South. We believe that media has the power to change lives, and we provide makers with resources to champion Southern storytelling, serving as a leading advocate, providing filmmakers and artists with professional support, filmmaking grants, and fiscal sponsorship. In this webinar, we'll talk about the latest set of guidelines from the Documentary Producers Alliance on negotiating contracts for independent documentary producers. Independent documentary producers face a variety of complicated challenges, including how to make a living from their work. So, volunteer members of the Documentary Producers Alliance came together over the course of 2 years to develop this set of best practices as a resource for work for hire doc producers to be better equipped to navigate the doc landscape, which lacks clear rules around sustainable working conditions and compensation for producers. Guidelines are a tool for independent documentary producers as they consider and define working relationships with rights holders. They are the first of their kind, including a recommended rate table for producers, what terms producers should consider within a contract, and a glossary of key terms and phrases. Again, thank you everyone for joining us today. A couple of housekeeping things. We definitely going to have time for Q&A with JR. But if you have any questions, it's a Q&A box at the bottom of your Zoom portal. Just click that box, put your question in there. So throughout the presentation, you got any questions that pop up, put your questions in the Q&A box, and we'll get to those during the presentation. And again, Chris Everett, and I'm gonna hand this over to JR so she can go ahead and get started.
Thank you so much, Chris. I really appreciate that kind introduction. Again, my name is J.R. Hardman. I'm based in Salt Lake City, Utah, but I have some strong connections to the southern region. I lived in Atlanta for almost 9 years, and I still go back periodically, especially since a lot of the COVID restrictions have lifted. And I love the South and had the wonderful opportunity to attend the Southern Documentary Convening that happened earlier this year. So thanks to everybody at SDF for having us. Again, I'm a board member of the Documentary Producers Alliance, which is a group of volunteer independent documentary producers that have come together to advocate for people working in this space. So I'm going to go ahead and start by sharing my screen. And if folks can't see this, to feel free to let me know. It's a little bit difficult for me to see the chat while I'm sharing my screen. So please put your questions in the Q&A box, and I have a couple sections of the presentation where we'll be able to get to questions, which I hope you guys will have a lot of. So again, a little bit about the Documentary Producers Alliance. This is a coalition of documentary producers working across the United States and also internationally. This slide is a little bit outdated. We actually now have over 600 international members. And these range from brand new baby producers, folks just graduating from school, or actually current student members, all the way up through Academy Award, Emmy Award winning producers who have been doing this for many years. And DPA was founded in 2016 by a group of really brilliant documentary producers who noticed that producers aren't always recognized in the same way as other crew members on nonfiction projects. We aren't always included in, for example, festival guides or on awards. And producers do a lot of work to make a documentary possible. And so it's really important that in order to sustain ourselves as professionals in this industry, we are recognized as filmmakers as well as the other crew members on the team. DPA, in addition to these set of guidelines, has also released previous sets of guidelines. You might be familiar with our guidelines on the documentary Waterfall, which is geared towards how to pay back investors on your film, who gets paid in what order. And then we also have guidelines on best practices in crediting. So what different producer positions you might hear: associate producer, co-producer, lead producer, line producer, and what all of those titles actually mean in the industry and should mean when you're being credited on a film. So with that said, I'm going to stop sharing my screen for just a second. Um, how many of y'all, and if you want to put this in the chat, how many of y'all have worked for free on a film, or worked without a contract on a film? And I see I have for sure. Me. I've done it. I see a lot of hands going up. Our goal with this set of guidelines is that folks don't have to work for free, always are getting paid something for your time on a project. And how to go about creating that arrangement between yourself and what we call the rights holder. So the originator of the project, who owns the rights to the film, and if the film makes money, is going to be the one who recoups those production costs for that film. So I know that a lot of us have done this work out of love and passion and for free, but as documentary producers trying to make a living in this area, we would like to advocate for the idea of never working for free, always getting paid, so that we as a collective can negotiate for better rights and payments on projects so that we can sustain ourselves as professionals working in this industry. All right. So kind of getting back into the presentation, a little bit of background on why these guidelines were created. We found that there was a lack of knowledge amongst producers about what the negotiation process could and should be, and how to make sure that we're getting sustainable compensation on projects. And so the team of volunteer producers, so again, we said not to work for free, but all of us in the DPA are volunteers. So I know there's a little bit of hypocrisy there, but this is us coming together to try and set some best practices. And who is this document for? So this document is created with the idea of US-based producers in mind, knowing that in other countries, in Europe, in South America, in Asia, there could be different best practices. Payments are different because cost of living is different. And this set of guidelines was created with kind of a general survey of mostly US-based producers. And so there may need to be some extrapolation depending on where you live within the country, what your cost of living is. And you might have to make some adjustments to that, just knowing that this is trying to be kind of a baseline. And this document is for what we consider independent producers, so people who aren't long-term employees of a studio, or in my case, I work at a public media station in Salt Lake City at PBS Utah. And we have a little bit different kind of structure because I'm paid year-long with benefits, and I'm considered a long-term employee. So this is really geared towards people who are coming on an independent production and trying to negotiate with the rights holder of that film. And so the rights holder, again, would be the person or people or studio or company that initiates this project, and you would be being hired on this project as a work for hire producer, who might not have any ownership control over the film itself. Again, definition of a producer. We consider a producer to be the person who works side by side with a director to ensure the vision and goals of the film come about. The producer might be doing everything from staffing to budgeting to legal considerations, hiring other crew people on the project. They might also be working closely with the director to develop the story, build relationships with participants, schedule shoots, shape the narrative through the editing process, assist in all sorts of key decision making, and also working with all of the other collaborators on the film from when the project is conceived and being ideated, all the way through when the project is being distributed through festivals, through independent distribution, through maybe Netflix or some other kind of distribution, and helping with the distribution plan. So the producer does a ton of work, which is why we think it's so important for producers to be recognized as crew members that work on the project. Here's a list of a bunch of other additional producer responsibilities that you might be doing on a project. And for this set of guidelines, we're really talking about the lead producer, who might be the sole producer on the film, or there might be more than one producer, in which case you might be considering your compensation levels in a different way. And like I said, the rights holder owns the rights to the project. It could be an individual person, it could be a production company, it could be the entity that's going to be paying you as the producer, and is really the decision maker about the project and what is going to happen with it in the end. When you start a new project, so this program is going to kind of be broken up into two stages: how to vet a project and begin the consideration of whether you want to even sign on to that project. And then the second half is really going to be focused on once you're on the project, how do you make sure that your contract is negotiated properly and you're getting paid and advocating for yourself, and that you and the rights holder have a clear understanding of what your responsibilities are. And so with any given project, say you are approached to be a producer on the project, or you found out about a project and maybe you're pitching yourself as a producer. Before you sign on to that project, we want to make sure that you have done adequate pre-vetting and evaluation of that project. You might want to even initiate a trial period where you work on a temporary basis with the rights holder to make sure that you're a good fit and that the project is a good fit for you. And then you'll go through the process of actually negotiating and signing that final contract. During the pre-project evaluation phase, this is your opportunity and the rights holder's opportunity to get to know each other, to understand what your working styles are going to be, to really set clear terms. How much are you going to work? How much are you going to get paid? What are the different stages of the project? How long do you expect this project to take? And we have a longer form document of this presentation where you can see some sample discussion topics and ideas of what you should be talking to that rights holder about in these initial consultations. You are wanting to make sure that this rights holder is somebody that you trust and can work with over the course of this project, because a lot of us know documentary projects can last 6 months, they can last 6 years, and this is going to be someone or a company that you're going to be working with for a long period of time. Even when the project is done being produced and is ready to be distributed, you might have another 10 years with that project going through all the phases of the actual distribution and getting it out to the world. So it's really important to consider, is this a viable project that you can make money off of as the producer during the production? And then what is the life of that project going to look like? And where in that life of this project are you coming on? And where in the life of this project are you coming off? So, you always also want to make sure that you're assessing your own capabilities. Are you experienced enough to do what this project needs? Is this the right kind of project for you? I mean, maybe that's even topic wise. For example, if the project is about say like African American people in the South, and I'm a white person living in the West, maybe this isn't the best project for me with my personal background and experience. Or maybe this is something where I'm coming on as kind of an outside eye. And the rest of the crew is made up of people of color. And I'm providing a different perspective from maybe the director or someone else. But that's something that's really important to consider, is like, where are you coming at? Is that coming from? Is this a film where it's a community that you're a part of? Is this a film where maybe you're providing an outside different perspective? And is that the right thing for you and for the film itself? Like I mentioned, you probably want to set up some level of a trial period. That might be, I'm going to work on this project for a couple weeks. We're going to kind of see how it goes with writing this first grant application, or maybe hiring these first couple of crew people and going out on one shoot, and see what happens. And if you feel like this is a good experience, if you feel like you're working well with the director or the production company, and then comparing your experience, like, is this what you expected to happen with the rights holder, and making sure that they're also having a good experience working with you. Once that trial period is over, and you should have some form of a written agreement with payment included for that trial period. But then you're going to go into the process of negotiating the longer form contract that will stay with you throughout the course of the production. Also keeping in mind that there may be a need to renegotiate elements of that contract. But once it's in writing and you've signed it, you've agreed to those terms. And so it is really important to always have an attorney review that contract before you sign anything, and make sure that there's not things that you missed or things that the rights holder might have missed, so that everybody's really on the same page. And in that contract, you're going to want to define very clearly what work you're going to be doing, what your schedule is going to be, what the terms are of work, and how much you're going to get paid for what elements of the schedule. Also, really important is to negotiate your credit on the film. You want to make sure that you're credited as the title that you deserve. So as the lead producer, you might be credited as, for example, producer. There are other producer roles, and like I mentioned, we have a whole set of guidelines on our website listing all the different kinds of producers that might work on a film. And so, and you're also going to want to make sure that you know how that credit's going to be displayed. Is it in the end credits of the film? Are you getting an opening title card? How long is it going to be on screen? Et cetera, et cetera. And to make sure that you're getting credited adequately for the work that you're doing. And then you're going to always negotiate compensation. You want to make sure that you're being paid fairly and adequately, and you make sure also that you know who is the owner of the final product, Um, there could also be some back end or net profit participation that you do, with the idea in mind that you should always be getting paid during the production. This is back end or net profit participation is not a substitute for getting paid for your work as the project is being made. You should always be getting paid for your work as the project is getting made and not be relying on back end for your entire compensation for that project. So again, back end is not a substitution for compensation. All labor should be compensated. And if you're doing the level of work where you become a rights holder for that project, again, you should still be getting paid for your work as the project is being produced. So I'm gonna stop sharing for just a second and ask, does anybody have any questions about this first half, really talking about how to decide whether this project is the right project for you? So I see Anna says, where can we find that guidelines for the documentary Waterfall? So if you look at documentaryproducersalliance.org, that is our website, and I can put that into the chat. And the contract guidelines are on our very first page that you'll see if you go to that website. And then the other guidelines, if you go into the site, will be listed there, all the different ones that we've done, as well as some open letters and things like that. And does anybody have any other questions about what we've talked about so far? Do you have any resources to research ownership under a production company? That is a great question. I mean, I think you might be talking about maybe like if somebody has life rights or something like that. You can ask for those documents and to see those documents. I am not an expert on knowing what rights have been registered with different entities, but if you write to us at I'll put the DPA's kind of general email. We should be able to connect you with some folks who know. And if you become a member of DPA, we also have a um, Slack group that is available, and you can correspond with all sorts of other producers that have done this much more than I have. And also keeping in mind that there could be multiple projects on the same topic. So there could be a production company that has life rights to someone's story, and then another company that's doing a similar story on a similar topic without that. And both of those projects could technically be produced about a similar topic without running into confusion about ownership, depending on how they're doing that project. So I hope that answers a little bit about where you can get some more information. All right, so I'm going to share my screen one more time, and we'll get into kind of the meat of this discussion, which is how to negotiate your compensation and make sure that you're getting paid. So we surveyed members of the DPA, which at that time was a little bit lower, but we're now up to over 600 members worldwide. We also spoke with industry stakeholders on current indie rates. We talked with folks from editing organizations, cinematographers organizations, and this is a kind of baseline recommendation based on projects that have a budget And we have different budget scales and recommendations for the baseline of what you should be getting paid as the lead producer on that project. We also spoke with the Directors Guild of America and the Producers Union. So there was a lot of feedback that went into creating this guidelines. In terms of flat fees and budget percentages, we are proposing a radical shift in how producers are paid. We think producers should be getting paid on a project while they're working on the project, and not be getting paid according to milestones of that project. So you shouldn't be waiting until principal photography is complete before you're getting paid, as for example, as a milestone. You shouldn't be taking like a 10% of the overall budget, and then if that budget never gets raised in its entirety, then you'd be getting paid a significantly smaller portion of which would be 10% of that tiny budget. So we think that producers should be getting paid all along the process, throughout their time based on the actual time put into the film rather than we reach this particular milestone or the film is completed, or we raised money with a particular grant. The budget for your producer should be continuous. And if that money runs out, that could be a time where you've worked into your contract potentially how to exit gracefully from a project or take a hiatus or something like that because there's not enough money to continue to pay you. So again, the assumptions for this compensation recommendation are that this is going to be a one-person producer, so a single person performing the role of the lead producer on the film. These assumptions are that you would be getting paid a weekly rate based on the number of hours that you work in any given week. We're assuming that you're getting paid as an independent contractor under a work for hire agreement. So this is assuming that you're an independent contractor rather than an employee of a company. And we're also assuming that this does not include exceptional situations such as hazards for traveling to a war zone or something like that, hazards to your physical and mental health. So you may want to also negotiate additional compensation if the project has risks that are to be considered. So this minimum rate fee table is based on what the budget is of the film. This tier 1 is obviously a very large budget. It's $750,000. I know that there are a lot of projects that are budgeted at much lower than this, 100,000, 200,000, or maybe like a short film that's budgeted at $10,000 or $5,000. This is assuming that the project is a feature-length project or maybe a series that does have a budget. And if your budget is under this or over this amount, you can scale your rate accordingly, but always keeping in mind that you should be getting paid while you're working. So the minimum recommendation for that budget up to $750,000 is based on a 35 or 40 hour a week work week at $2,400 a week. Then when we get up to that tier 2 level, we're talking about closer to $3,000 a week. And in that tier 3 level, about $3,600 a week. And if your budget goes well over this, then you should be scaling accordingly. And also keeping in mind that these rates were done as a broad survey over the United States. So if you're working in an area like New York City or Los Angeles, you might be expecting something that's higher than this. If you're working in a place with a much lower cost of living, you also might want to adjust this according to that. Here's an example of how you might structure your payment based on a weekly rate. So on the left here, you see a tier two film with a budget of $900,000 at a rate of $3,000 a week for a full 40-hour work week. This priority project is a project that's probably your main source of income and is the project you're going to be devoting your most of your time to. And on a biweekly schedule, you'd be getting paid $6,000 every other week. Um, and, this could also change depending on if there are holidays or time off or vacation. You might not be working during those holidays, but you might still want to negotiate some kind of payment during that time, or a way for you to portion this out over the course of the time so you can still afford to take that holiday with your family, and make sure that you're also trying to have a normal life with some level of work-life balance. And then the tier one film, which a lower level budget of $600,000 at a rate of $2,750 for each period of 35 hours. You on this project would only be working 5 hours a week. So this could be something where this project is going to take place over a long period of time. This maybe isn't your main project, but you're still getting paid something each week. And so biweekly, obviously, this is going to be a lot less, but it's because the number of hours you're committing to that project are a lot less. And I've looked and done some of my own calculations, and these budgets are like if you were working for a whole year on a project and you're getting paid this rate, you're looking at about 10 to 20% of the overall budget of the project. And this again could change depending on different factors on the film. So, any questions here now that we've come to kind of the discussion on these rate tables? Does anybody have anything that you want to ask?
I got a question.
Sure, yeah, please.
I know we had talked about this earlier, but I want to kind of bring it up to the, to the crowd. I know, a lot of times we're working with real low budget projects. I guess talk about, ways where you can negotiate, maybe kind of not taking some pay for a while, and how you can structure that to just get paid later. I guess kind of talk
Yeah,
about that a little bit more in depth.
yeah, and I'll get into that. We have like one more section
Oh,
of the presentation, but I think so. You're talking a little bit about there's two ways to kind of delay your payment on a film. We call one delayed payment, which is you're going to get paid in 3 weeks. This grant money is coming through. We already know it's coming, and we just haven't received the check yet. And so you're going to keep working on the project knowing that this money is coming through, and you're going to get paid, in 2 weeks. Or maybe it's an equity investor is sending you a distribution of their investment on the film, and then that's going to be something that you're going to get paid, and it's happening. And so that could be a situation where you delay payment. We consider that to be relatively acceptable because we know a lot of times how these projects work. But also keeping in mind that if this is your only source of income and you need this to eat, you need to make sure you get paid. And again, if you come to a situation where you're not getting paid after that delay that was agreed upon and you're not seeing that money, that could be a time where you're figuring out, again, do you need to take a hiatus from this project? Do you need to step away entirely? And you should always work out in your contract, these are the conditions under which I might have to step away from this project or take a step back from this project. Because it's really can be really awkward to talk about how to exit gracefully from a project if that project isn't working out in the exact way that everyone expected. But you should always think about that before you go into a project because that can help you maintain those strong relationships with the rights holder. Maybe 6 months from now, this huge grant comes through and they can suddenly bring you back on the project. You don't want to burn that bridge. And you want to make sure you could come back onto the project. And it's in these types of situations, like it should be no hard feelings. Nobody's doing this to harm the project. Everybody is really usually really committed to the project's success, but also like keeping in mind we need to eat. We need to pay our rent. This is a business for us, and we are professionals, and we should be treated as such.
Totally. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. It looks like yeah, so somebody has a question about rates for executive producers. There are a couple of different kinds of executive producers that you might have on a project. You might have an executive producer that is coming on the project solely because they're giving you their name, or maybe they're going to come on the project and do voiceover as a celebrity or something like that. And in that case, they might be basically donating that to the project and they might not be getting paid as an executive producer. There are also situations where an executive producer is coming on to a project and is basically going to be a consultant, maybe like a story consultant type role. And a lot of times those people kind of come in and exit in a short period of time. There are also executive producers that they are funders. And the reason they're getting that title is because they are giving you the money to pay your crew and your expenses. In which case, that type of an executive producer might not be getting paid at all. They might be taking a cut of the film, and they might not actually be working day to day on the project. And so if you check out DPA's crediting guidelines on the website, there's more information about what some of those titles mean and kind of what is the difference between an executive producer that is performing a creative role or an executive producer that is basically just a funder, and kind of how that should be worked out in the negotiations. But a lot of times an executive producer isn't your lead producer on the film that's in the trenches with the project all the way through and is doing the day-to-day business operations of making the film run. And then somebody asked, you mentioned needing a lawyer to review contracts. And are there resources for pro bono or sliding scale legal services? Actually, the UCLA has a legal clinic, and they will provide pro bono services for films. I've seen some of their attorneys on other webinars. And so I would check out the UCLA Film Legal Clinic. They will provide pro bono services. And the catch there, or a little bit of a catch, is that they work with student attorneys and they're supervised by professional attorneys who are basically their professors. But they work on a longer schedule. And so they mentioned that if you're looking for free or greatly reduced legal services from their legal clinic, that you might need to contact them like right at the beginning of a semester so that they can work with you, or you might need to expect them to take weeks or maybe a month before they're able to help completely review that agreement for you. But there are absolutely free and discounted legal services that you can get, and you can hire an attorney just to review one contract. And you might be paying them a few $100s, and that's it. And maybe you're working with them later on the film. But you should always have someone review a contract before you sign it. And then one more question. If the EP is getting paid but is not performing a creative role, and their payment is based on a percentage of the budget, what's a reasonable percentage? I don't, I think that's going to depend again on what their credit and what their level is. Um, like you said, they might be getting paid a percentage of the budget. Um, or I mean, maybe they're getting paid a percentage of the proceeds from the film on the back end. But I don't know that the answer to that question. It's a little bit outside the purview of this, which is the lead producer on the film. So I'm sorry if I can't fully answer that question, but I will put the DPA's email address in the chat, and you can always contact us, and we'll try to find someone who can answer a question like that. All right, so I've got like one more section in the presentation, and then I'll probably have about 5 more minutes for questions at the end. All right, so a few additional factors to consider that might impact how much you're getting paid or could be considered alternative compensation. US federal holidays, like I mentioned, you want to make sure that your time is being valued and that you're being treated like a professional. So you will probably want to negotiate something into your contract to honor those holidays as paid holidays that don't
Yeah,
impact your weekly pay.
JR.
Yes.
Um, I think you got the website on screen instead of the
Oh,
link.
I'm so sorry.
So it's all good.
Sorry, thank you. Let's see.
There you
Does
go.
this look right?
Yep, yep. You good to go.
Okay. Sorry, sometimes my Zoom clicking is not the best. So like I said, additional factors to consider. Are you getting paid holidays? Think about your tax status. If you're being paid as an independent contractor, are you needing to put money towards retirement savings, vacation, sick days? Are you paying your own health insurance? Or is the production paying for that? Are you paying other benefits or is the production paying for that? If you're in a hazardous type situation, for example, like I mentioned, you're going to a war zone and it's going to be, you're going to be putting your own health and safety at risk. Should you be getting paid additional compensation or is there a specific type of insurance that the production might need to buy for you in case of something happening? And then can these potentially benefits be considered part of an overall compensation package? If there is something where like the production company has these additional benefits. There may be states or locations where you are considered an employee rather than an independent contractor, and that will probably change some things. If you're an employee, you might be entitled to things like workers' comp or unemployment insurance and other things like that. If you're an independent contractor, you might be having to be paying into unemployment insurance, or you might be having to pay self-employment tax. Again, I'm not an attorney, I'm not a tax accountant, so I can't give you specific legal or tax advice. But you should always have somebody be reviewing this, and you should be in touch with an accountant so that you can make sure that your tax liabilities are covered and that you have what you need to be successful. Um, Other factors that could impact how much you're getting paid. What if there's more than one producer on the film? Say there's two people and you're splitting the number of hours. One person's working 20 hours and the other person's working 20 hours. That that minimum might be cut in half and split between those two producers. Or a project might need two producers that are working full time, in which case both folks are working 40 hours and they're both getting paid at that minimum. The budget of your project might change. For example, you have a $100,000 budget or a $300,000 budget. Your project gets ITVS co-production and suddenly your budget's doubled. You should adjust your rates accordingly to make sure that you're getting paid a fair wage. You might also be taking on more responsibilities on a project. Maybe you started out at 10 hours a week and the project gets this grant or this co-production funding, and suddenly you're working 40 hours a week. At that point, you might need to adjust your contract. And are there other things about you as a producer that you're bringing into the project that might make you want to get a more of a premium rate for your services? Like I mentioned, and if there's one thing you take away from this, it's don't work for free. Please don't work for free. Don't work without a contract. Make sure you know what's going on and that your expectations and the rights holders' expectations are clear. We want to work towards pay parity for producers, and you can, like I said, make short-term accommodations for delayed compensation, or you can take a graceful exit or take a break from a project if the money is not coming through. Always trying to keep in mind what your relationship is and working in a graceful exit if you need to do that. And so there might be things that you make allowances for, but it should never be, and then I'm not getting paid. And I've been working for 6 months and I haven't gotten a check. This will make it so that it will be easier for producers to negotiate across the board and to be taken seriously as professionals. And again, like we mentioned, how we define delayed versus what deferred means. We define delayed compensation as compensation that you receive within a short period of time. Like I said, you might be making an allowance that this grant is about to come through and you're going to get paid in 2 weeks, or you're going to get paid at the end of the month, or you're going to get paid as soon as that check arrives in the mail or, direct deposit or something like that. What delayed does not mean is that you are getting paid after the film is completed and over, and you're getting paid in the event that the film makes money. That is deferred payment, and we do not recommend that being your source of payment on the film. So like I said, recommendations is that your delayed compensation should be paid quickly. It should be paid in full or maybe partially in a series of payments. It should happen during the production and post-production phases of the project as the project is receiving funding. You should be negotiating this in advance. So before you agree to anything, there should be something in writing that says the production is paying me X number of dollars. And you should consider things like caps. I am only going to work for up to $1,000 of delayed compensation. If I hit that cap, I cannot continue working on this project until that check comes through to me. And never convert delayed compensation to back end or equity on the project. You should be getting paid for your work as you are doing the work. Like I said, how we define deferred compensation. Deferred compensation is when the film gets done, you will get money if and when the film makes money. Films are very risky, which is something we tell investors all the time. If you're investing in a film, whether that's your equity in money or your sweat equity as a person working on the film, you should be getting paid if and when the film makes money on the back end, but that is not a substitute for getting paid while the film is being made. Like I mentioned, a couple of other considerations would be legal and business accounting, tax liability. Um, are you an independent contractor or are you, as the producer, your own LLC? Like, do you have a loan out as the producer on the film? Like I mentioned, some states do require producers to be considered and treated as employees, which puts you into a different tax situation, both for the production and for you as an employee of that production. And like I mentioned, work for hire means that the right holder owns the film. It also means that they own your contributions to the film. So if you sign on as a work for hire producer, that means that you might not be taking any rights to the film. And this is also something for like a director that's a rights holder. If you are if you are meant to be the sole rights holder of the film and you do not make a contract with your producer, they could potentially come back to you after the film is finished and say there was no agreement. I assumed I have rights to the film as somebody who contributed my creative work to this film. And if you don't have anything written down, they could potentially take legal action to take a percentage of the film's final distribution or and so this is equally as important for a producer coming on as a work for hire as it is for a rights holder hiring a producer. Make sure that you know where the ownership of the final film lies. That should not be something that is decided when the film is in distribution and you're making a deal with Netflix. Like, if you're at the stage where you're negotiating a deal, you want to make sure you know who is the signatory on that deal, who gets to make the final decision. And if you don't put it in the producer's contract, they could potentially say, I should be considered a rights holder, and then they have to be involved in that whole process. And then again, if you remember one thing, it's don't work for free. And we are actually, when our new website launches in hopefully the next couple of weeks, we're going to be having tote bags that list all of these important things about being a producer on a project. But again, don't work for free. Don't work without a contract. Don't let others work without a contract. If you are a producer on a film and you're hiring a cinematographer, don't let them work without knowing what they're getting paid and what their terms are. Um, Make sure to vet the people hiring you. Call and ask for references of a company. Ask other people in your professional organizations. Consider whether you're the best person for the project. Consider a trial period and negotiate an exit strategy or a way to take a hiatus from a project. Make sure you know what's expected of you and what you can expect from the production. And then, we know things change. Try to be fair, try to act responsibly, be honest, make sure you're inclusive on a project, and then know where your lines are, and respect your own lines. If somebody is asking you to do something on a project that isn't in your contract, that you don't feel comfortable with, don't do that thing. Make sure you're taking care of yourself and you know what your limits are. And you're considering yourself as a professional. When you're doing your budget for a project, producers are a line item. They are a crew member on the team and they should be getting paid, and that should be in the budget. So one last thing of why we wrote this document. We're trying to protect ourselves financially, administratively, emotionally. We're trying to set best practices. We know that this best practices, like, this is not legally binding. This is what we're hoping the industry will take on as a mantle, and that we'll take on as producers to make sure that we're treated fairly. and share this with other people. If you found this valuable, let other people know about this, because this isn't just producers. Like, we want to make sure cinematographers and editors and directors and anybody working in this nonfiction landscape is treated fairly and equitably, and can do this as their actual job. Um, so with that said, I know we're running a little bit low on time, but I'm happy to stay on for a little bit more and try to get some more questions answered.
Yeah, I think we got somebody in the chat box. I think they had a question. You might have already answered it. I'm not sure.
Yeah, so I did
Okay.
answer that question about EPs. And again, this guidelines is for our lead producer. So if you have another role, for example, associate producer or executive producer, um, you may need to make some changes or considerations based on those differences in title and what level of work the person is going to be doing on the project.
Cool. Excellent.
And
Well,
then
Jay,
oh, sorry, go ahead.
oh, no, I was gonna say, I guess, talk about the benefits of membership as well for the Documentary Producers Alliance. Say if, God,
Oh,
I want to sign up for sure. Like, I guess talk about that a little bit and how that relates to what you guys are doing, with these guidelines.
yeah. So, like I mentioned, we're an all volunteer organization. I think we have one actual staff person that is working for DPA right now. We're hoping to have a new one soon. And so benefits of membership, our membership is a pay what you can. So we do have dues that we ask people to pay. We have different tiers. So if you're a student and you want to join, we have, I think it's $20 all year long to be a member. But we never turn anyone away for the inability to pay. You can always write to our coordinator and say, hey, I need a fee waiver for my dues for this year. No questions asked. You can be a member of the organization. Um, Benefits of membership that I already mentioned, we have an amazing Slack. I have found an archival producer through Slack. I found a fair use attorney through Slack. I have gotten ethical questions that I have answered about a project, about projects that I've been working on. And there are really experienced people on our Slack. Like I mentioned, we're working on launching our new website, which we're hoping will come out in the next couple of weeks. Our web designer, unfortunately, was impacted by Helene, so we're we might take a little bit more time than we thought. But we're hoping to have that new website launch really soon, and there will be a member portal where you can get access to contact information for other people, and you can see all different elements of the inner workings of our organization. And then we do also have all different subcommittees. So there was a subcommittee that just worked on this set of guidelines, and we're about to start a new set of guidelines coming up here soon. We're also hoping to launch an ethics resource library in the next couple of months here, which will have information about different ethical questions that people have faced in working on their productions, a little bit about what they've done, case studies, and then we do webinars kind of like this for our members, and we participate in other events. So if you do join, I highly recommend the Slack. Like I said, I've used it for numerous things, and is really like the reason I'm hanging around DPA. And like I said, we advocate for producers. We try to make our lives better and more sustainable, and try to share knowledge and the wealth that we have across this industry. So, have you ever had a webinar on the impact of AI on documentaries? That's actually a really great question. We have a sister organization called the Archival Producers Alliance. They have actually recently come out with a set of guidelines on AI in documentaries. And we're actually co-hosting a webinar for our members with the APA. I believe it's next week, actually, I think it's on the 16th. So they've come out with this set of guidelines for how to responsibly and ethically use generative AI in documentary projects or for documentary projects. And I know this is a huge conversation right now in our industry. So if you're a member of DPA and you want to come to that webinar, I think it's, like I said, next week. And if you're not, definitely consider joining. But also the APA's guidelines are free and open to the public. You can go to their website and download those at any time. And then I also want to put in our email. So we have a really amazing coordinator named Annalise, and they are so wonderful and answer our emails. And that is the organization's coordinator email, and you can send questions to us at any time. I'll also put my email in the chat. This is the email I use for my independent production. But feel free to, write to me, ask me questions. I hope this has been helpful for folks. I found this really helpful for me, and I can tell you, if I had had this a couple of years ago, I think I would have had some projects that I might not have started working on at all. And I definitely would have had a better experience on those projects, knowing what's expected of me and what I can expect from them. Oh, I'm so glad. Thanks, Jessica. Um, yeah, anything else, Chris? Did I miss
Nah,
anything?
nah, nah. I think you hit it on the head. Like I said, this is being recorded as well. So we will share this recording. I know someone asked earlier. I think they wanted your slide deck as well. Is that available anywhere on the
Um,
website or?
you know what? I think it's attached to I think it's attached. Oh, you know what, Chris, it looks like my messages might just have gone to us.
Yeah,
Can you
yeah, that do.
figure out how to get those into the general chat?
Yeah, yeah. 1 second. Let
Oh,
me
you know what? Yeah, I know. I think I can do it. I'm
just hit
sorry.
everyone. Yeah, hit everyone and then put it in there.
All right. So this is DPA's website where you can find our guidelines. This is our coordinator email. You'd think I would know how to use Zoom after all this
All good.
all this time. This is my email, and then this is the link to um, the Archival Producers Alliance, which, like I mentioned, is a sister organization of ours. There's a lot of cross membership between these two groups, but they're the ones with the new AI guidelines that are really helpful, and were done in collaboration with all sorts of organizations like ITVS and PBS best standards and practices. Um, and yeah, so hopefully that's everything that I put in. And if you're, yeah, so I don't think our slide deck is up anywhere, but our actual negotiating contract guidelines
It's on the site.
document is on our website, and then here's the link to just that as a PDF.
Cool.
And it has all the, more detailed information, rates tables, and like I said, some of those more detailed definitions, what is a rights holder, what is a producer, um, questions to ask during the trial period, et cetera, et cetera. All sorts of stuff that I didn't have time to get into fully today. But hopefully this is a good kind of broad overview of what that document entails. And if you want the details, they're definitely in there.
Cool. Thank you. Thank you. I just want to thank everyone again for joining us today for negotiating contracts for independent documentary producers with J.R. Hardman, board member of the Documentary Producers Alliance. Also, join us for our next webinar on October 25th. We're going to be doing podcasting, past, present, future with Stephanie Kuo, Vice President of Content at PRX. In this session, Stephanie will provide an overview of the stakes, trends, and players in the world of podcasting, as well as what it takes to produce a desirable, feasible, and viable podcast in 2024 and beyond. So if folks are interested in doing the audio documentaries, podcasting, definitely join us for our next webinar. You can just go on southerndocumentaryfund.org, hit the events tab. You can sign up right there on there. So again, thank you again, JR. This has been great. A lot of good information. I'm definitely going to go ahead and sign up for a membership, and also membership for the Archival Producers Alliance as well. I'm gonna get a membership for both. I think these are great organizations that that can benefit us as independent documentary makers. So again, thank you for your time and sharing your information and letting us know about all the wonderful things that the Documentary Producers Alliance is doing out here for documentary makers.
Thank you again so much, Chris, and thanks to everyone at SDF for all the amazing stuff you do in making this a wonderful ecosystem for filmmakers in the South. I can't say how much I love you guys enough.
Thank you, thank you. Also, this will be available. I should have it edited up probably, I'll say by Monday. So we'll be sending out the folks who registered today. We'll send out an email with the recording and definitely share it. Let folks know about the Documentary Producers Alliance as well. And if, like I said, join, get a membership. These type of organizations need our support and our input as well. So definitely check them out, keep up to date with them and also us as well. Till the next time, you guys have a good one. I'll see y'all later.